against Dumbledore at the same time, so that there can be, like, some, like, balance. And so it just, like, depends on how the writer is viewing themselves at this moment.
Sure.
Anyways. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Semi-Bookish podcast.
Yes.
They didn't hear all of that. They just only heard me saying, hello, everyone. But anyways.
I thought you started recording without me.
I mean,
that was the plan.
Are you technically, it's been recording for like 10 minutes. In this room with absolutely no noise happening. But anyways, welcome to the Semi-Bookish podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about things that we'll talk about later.
We'll introduce, yes.
Yeah, we'll introduce the topic later. It should be fun.
But
first, introductions and... Well, slight introductions, but not really.
Sure.
So, Tony, who are you? What are you reading? / playing / watching / listening /
Okay.
You get the idea at this point.
do. Hi, I'm Tony. What am I... Okay, so I'll just start with what I'm reading because I know that, and other things I'm not really... I am watching Ahsoka because it's coming out each week, and I have a very complicated...
Do you have thoughts and opinions on
Yes,
Ahsoka?
I have a very complicated note of opinions that most people will either agree... No one would actually agree with everything I think and feel about Ahsoka because everyone thinks in extremes, which is me giving the audience a little bit more of a hook of our subject of what we're going to talk about because I feel that that's...
Speaking of our subject matter, the amount of thirst videos I've seen of a certain character who's come back to fame from Ahsoka because he's in it. Mr. Wears a helmet. Not really well. He doesn't wear a helmet right now. Because he's wearing his Clone Wars outfit.
Oh, right.
Everyone's so happy about that.
Yes, actually, I will say that of everything that's happening in Ahsoka, Hayden Christensen's performance has been by far the best.
The amount of videos I've seen of just Hayden Christensen alone.
I always conceded, and that's because I went and watched something other than him being Anakin Skywalker. I always conceded that he's a much better actor than George Lucas's writing in those movies allowed him to be. There are a lot, in my opinion, Lucas's writing in those movies is not as bad as everyone says it is. However, Christensen is a much better actor than George was writing at that time. Mm-hmm. So I was always waiting for him to find a project that would give him that. The fact that it's happening in a Star Wars TV series is...
Oh my god, no, he's just so fantastic.
As Anakin Skywalker is bizarre and interesting and full circle in a way that I never expected.
I know that this series follows Ahsoka, but if they potentially did a live-action version of Clone Wars, would you watch it?
No, because I think that would be the worst thing they could possibly do.
I mean, I'm just saying, because you know that a lot of corporate Hollywood does a lot of,
it's a
bad decisions, so that bad decision is coming eventually, and you cannot convince me otherwise.
It's a terrible idea. But I'm enjoying Ahsoka, despite its many, 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 many problems. No, my friends, it is not the best Star Wars that has ever happened. By a long stretch. There are episodes of The Mandalorian that make a couple of the episodes of Ahsoka look bad by comparison. And The Mandalorian is not great, okay? It's fine.
So we're going to have a Star Wars Part 3 episode.
It's fun, and it should be fun. And I think I've always contended that with The Mandalorian. It's not supposed to be good television. That's the whole point of The Mandalorian. It's supposed to be fun. And there's a place where fun and good can happen, but it's not The Mandalorian. Anyway, so yes, Ahsoka's doing its thing. I'm enjoying it. But I'm not really watching much consciously other than trying to catch up. This is going to sound really stupid to everyone who knows me, but catching up on my Frasier. Which is basically me just...
You're rewatching it because they're doing the reboot,
yes,
aren't you?
Because I finally saw a commercial for the reboot, and I was like, oh, it's real. Done. And so I'm watching all of Frasier.
Tony has to immerse themselves into the universe.
And I gotta tell you, the first actual commercial where there's dialogue and you know the situation of the sitcom, not excited about it. I think it's a cash grab, and I think it's a stupid one. Why would you use Frasier as a cash grab this long after Frasier ended? This isn't Cheers. You could make that happen with Frasier Cheers.
They've been trying to do that with so many shows lately that it's kind of ridiculous.
I have very, very
It's the nostalgia factor. I say that with quotation marks, friends.
I do not have high hopes for this at all in any way, shape, or form, and Frasier is my favorite television show of all time.
Yes.
It's probably my favorite piece of media of all time.
Yes.
Without including Star Wars movies. But, that's the point, is that I feel like it could be a bad thing. Anyway, what am I reading? This is a very long preamble. I'm reading 2 books that are actually just incredible, but I just started them, so they could tank really easily. One is called And Then He Sang a Lullaby, and I actually have the library's copy in here because I cannot, for the life of me, remember this author's name unless I'm looking at it, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, so forgive me, because it's a Nigerian writer. I believe it's Ani Coyote, Sam Tochukwu. I got that part right. And it's it's really good so far. I just read the first chapter, and it's
good enough that you're actually putting it on your recommended shelf, which is saying so much.
I bought a copy. The hijinks are too much for me. Like, I'm like, oh, sir, and it's only going to it's going to.
And you're only 1 chapter in.
Yeah, I'm only 1 chapter in, and I'm like, okay, all right. And he has this really interesting, writing style that makes everything feel bigger than it really is, or smaller than it really is. So he could be telling you things like, for example, the main character's, on the day of his birth, his grandmother danced because her daughter-in-law was dead. And she made it known, and that's so funny that the tragedy of it only occurs a paragraph later when you see it from a different character's perspective.
Right.
The author brings in the son's perspective, who's just lost his wife and best friend and was never the same after that. And suddenly you're like,
oh, right. This is sad.
Oh, how does he feel about his mom? And the author may give you the answer, or he may not. There's so much fun in that kind of. The other thing I'm reading is The Late Americans by Brandon Taylor. Finally. And it's a Brandon Taylor novel. It's, at this point, I'm really, really enjoying it because it's Brandon Taylor. And he also somehow managed to write a despicable character who is someone that I admire. Within 2 pages, I realized, oh, God, he is horrible. And then 2 pages later, he's even worse. And you're just like, And then literally a page later, he goes to work, and suddenly, the care that he takes in this particular job is it's just that's a skill, I think, that is absent from much of American fiction these days. But anyway, don't get me started.
I don't think I'm familiar with Brandon Taylor.
He wrote a book, or he published a book a couple of years ago called Real Life. Well, I guess it was 2020, yeah. Called Real Life, and he's really good. Real Life has its problems, but I loved it as a book. I thought it was really, really well done. And this one, we'll see if it's better. I don't know. It might just be on par with, which would be fine, but...
Is he more YA or...?
No, not at all.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
If he ever wrote a YA book, I think the entire literary infrastructure would crack.
Implode.
Yeah, because that's not an arena he's gonna...
Okay.
Yeah, he once told a friend of mine at a conference, he was like, yeah, so you YA people, there's always some drama.
I feel like I know exactly which YA person
he gave that lovely little, he has this lovely little, facetious giggle that only, queer black men of a certain generation have. And it's not of my generation, but he borrowed it somehow, from, it's probably because he was raised by Southerners, but still, he has this wonderful little laugh, and I could hear him laughing at the end of that. I'm like, oh, you love the YA drama, because you don't have to deal with it. So anyway, there's my long preamble. Grant, what are you enjoying entertainment-wise?
My Italian journey continues. with the Sopranos.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, or Italian hijinks, as I like to call it.
Which would have been a terrible name for that show.
It would have been an amazing name for that show.
Oh, it could have been. Well, yeah. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, so that's going well. I was hoping for a 9/11 episode. We didn't get one. I kind of brushed past it. But
Yeah, I wonder. Now thinking about it, I wonder how many shows really did.
Yeah. It's an interesting. It would be interesting to look at.
Do a survey. Watch all the different shows that were airing during 9/11.
Before and after.
Yeah, because I was 12. I didn't really care, but. with COVID, it was really interesting watching like who was going to attempt to tackle it and who didn't, who was way obvious about it and who wasn't, you know.
I mean, they like make vague mentions of it and
Sure.
like a general atmosphere of fear and paranoia and stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And like economic recession that comes with all
Is that just like in like the lore, like the plot of it that they include that in?
Yeah, they just kind of...
Because my brain was going like black screen at the beginning going, we remember all the lives and people lost.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Because like
it's
some
thing.
shows did that, but then some shows just like included it in the lore and it's just there.
No, The Sopranos is a very understated show anyways, so I guess
Sure.
I shouldn't be surprised that they didn't directly address it, and it just kind of is weaved into the narrative.
The Sopranos is an understated show. That is never a sentence I've ever heard, and I love that that's the sentence you gave it, because that makes me want to watch it more.
I mean, especially compared to something, as much as I absolutely love Breaking Bad, it's very much, most of the time it's broadcasted how you should feel, I think. There's a lot more ambiguity with The Sopranos, at least in my opinion.
Right, and in television, you just don't do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Especially if you're gonna be what The Sopranos became, right? I mean, you know, most juggernaut TV shows are doing a Breaking Bad kind of thing, where you know they're very like timing down to the minute. Like this is exactly what the audience is supposed to feel right here, you know, kind of thing.
No, so. and when you're dealing with characters as like morally gray as a bunch of mobsters,
yes,
I think it kind of makes sense to present certain situations and let people draw their own conclusions. You know?
Yeah. Sure.
I don't know.
Makes sense. Okay. No. What are you Are you reading?
Yes. I am reading The Varieties of Religious Experience by Henry James. No, William James. Sorry. His brother.
William James.
His brother.
Interesting. Was that Henry James's brother?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never known that either.
There was a funny quip on the back of this where they're like critics back in the day used to say that Henry James wrote his novels as if he was writing like a philosophical treatise, and then William James wrote his philosophical treatise as if he was writing a novel. And I do kind of agree with that in that I've tried to read Henry James, and it's kind of a chore.
Yeah, he's not a slut. Yeah.
I mean, not that I dislike it or anything. I just haven't found the right time to dive in.
Or the right book.
Yeah,
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
But yeah, anyways. So yeah, it's how do I describe it? It's adapted from a series of lectures he gave in like the early 1900s.
Oh, okay, sure.
Where basically he tries to find he tries to look at, as the title would suggest, religious experiences across different, groups of people and whatnot. Tries to either find a psychological basis for it or just kind of, I don't know.
So he does the Joseph Campbell before Joseph Campbell, but maybe better.
I would say better because
Sure.
I mean, I'm not a big Joseph Campbell guy.
Oh, I mean, I don't know that anyone should be except for George Lucas, and thankfully he was. But other than no one should read Joseph Campbell.
No.
Or at least not seriously, I guess. That's how
as a historical document, maybe.
I mean, or even just as a matter of interest. I mean, I suppose he's interesting, but apart from, he's not really all that smart, right? I mean, we can agree on that. Suddenly, I feel like we're going to get flaming emails from Joseph Campbell, acolytes.
Are they out there?
I welcome it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm absolutely.
I mean, George Lucas is one, I'm sure.
Yeah, Campbellian acolytes have to
Imagine getting
exist,
a letter
right?
from George Lucas. How dare you write?
Nearly brilliant.
Dear Semi-Bookish.
That would be so great. That would be like that would be the happiest day of my entire life.
Even if
Oh
it's a
my
flame.
God, we got a flame letter from George Lucas. Brilliant.
No, and so it was kind of written in a time where I don't know what I'm talking about.
It was the late 19th century, wasn't it? Like William James was late 19th century.
Yeah. It was before,
maybe even turn of the century, turn of the 20th.
It was before all of his essays on pragmatism and stuff, some of which I've read. It used to be in our collection. You can kind of see hints of that in this.
Sure.
Yeah, no, he speaks in very plain language generally, which, as challenging as some of the ideas might be, he makes them very easy to digest.
Sure. Oh, that's smart.
I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Blah 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 blah.
Very cool. No, it's William James. All right,
Right.
you're up.
Does the fan fiction I was reading earlier count?
Well, it's what you're reading, isn't it?
I'm on a gender bend where I'm gender bending Harry Potter into multiple different scenarios. And so far, some of them have been pretty interesting. Because I'm not going to give too many spoilers. Because I've read like 5 in the span of like 2 days.
Sure.
All of which were like 64 chapters each. So therefore, like, I can't tell you the exact plot of like everything that I've read, nor the names, because I've forgotten at this point. Because some of them just weren't that memorable.
Yeah.
One of them, which made me so angry, was like a crossover between Vampire Diaries and... Yeah, no, so Tony's giving a look, and it just... So, after everything happens at, like, the Battle of Hogwarts, they, like, find out that, like, Harry's kind of, like, the master of death, so they can't really die, because they've already died and greeted death as an old friend and been resurrected. Which sounds weird, but it's just something that people do as a plot device. Just let it happen. Just let it happen. And then they, like, move because they have to move every once in a while so that they don't, like, garner, like, attention for not really aging. And so, you know.
Okay, I'm seeing the Vampire Diaries.
Yeah, no,
here.
so they move over. So they move over to Mystic Falls and they get involved in all this stuff, right?
Okay.
However, what I hated the most was the fact that apparently the main character, so our usual Potter character, has known Klaus already for a while, but they were compelled to forget him by him. And, you know, like that's fine. Okay, fine, whatever. I've seen worse in fanfiction that you can't...
I know. I'm just trying to make it...
I've seen worse. But why, fanfiction author, did you spend 10 chapters on flashbacks? 10 chapters.
Were they 10 consecutive chapters?
Yeah. But it was like over like the time, which is great, but like honestly, like it took with the way that the plot was going, it was jarring because it was just shoved in there.
Sure.
Because all of a sudden it was like, oh, I remember you. Well, how? Because they died already. They died again and they got resurrected. Because it's part of the whole Master of Death thing that I don't really know all about because I stopped reading after the 10 consecutive chapters of flashbacks of everything, of Klaus inserting himself into the whole entirety of the Horcrux hunt from book 7, and I was just like, this is horrible, I hate it, I'm not doing this again, and so I left.
So what are you playing?
Starfield.
And, okay, you cannot spoil anything?
I'm not really spoiling anything.
Because all I've seen is, like, a still photo, and I was like, okay, I have to buy this game. But I haven't bought it yet.
I haven't gotten too far into the main storyline yet, but that's only because, you know, it does the Skyrim thing where you can go off and do whatever you want after you exit the main section.
So it is, like, free range in that way.
Yeah, so, what happens is you go into the main quest. Like, you start, like, you know, you're like, oh, you're awake, whatever. You know, like the Skyrim thing. Except in this realm, this is your only spoiler. It's not actually a really big spoiler.
Sure.
You are a miner on a planet.
Oh,
and you accidentally find this thing for a client, and it's weird and freaky, and you're like, why did I just touch this and pass out? And then they all of a sudden bring you in onto this journey to find out more about this little artifact thing. Turns out that there's more that goes into that. There's 2, 3, technically 4-ish factions that you can play into. However, the 4 characters are only from one faction. The 4 companions that you can get are only from one faction.
No.
Like, the 4, like, main, like, romanceable companions, only from one faction.
Okay.
I will say I am in love with one of them already because he is fantastic, and his daughter is a little bookworm who, like, cons you into giving her money to go buy books. So she can read them on the ship, because wherever he goes, like, if he's following you, she's on the ship with you.
Oh, that's cool.
And it is the cutest thing I will ever see in my entire life.
Yeah.
You actually have traits that you can assign your character, 2 of which are you can be part of a native to one faction or a native to another faction, and you get special, like, comments that you can make to people depending on your traits that you were assigned. So, like,
Sure.
one, it's not really a spoiler because I don't know exactly which quest it's from, but it's absolutely hilarious. There's a section where you can be an extrovert. That's a trait. You can be an introvert or an extrovert. Introverts get better damage and stuff if you don't have any companions with you. Extroverts, you get more if you have your companions with you, and that's kind of how it works or something.
Interesting, okay.
But there's a section where you're infiltrating this place, and I don't know what it is yet because I haven't gotten in there. And this guy looks at you and he goes, "Listen, somebody's been infiltrating, and I think it's you." And you go, "Nuh-uh," at them, and they go, "Yeah," and you go, "Nuh-uh," and so it goes to, "Well, I must be you because we look exactly alike," and you can just run them around the ringer going like, "I know what I am, but what are you?"
That's really weird.
I know you are, but, like, what am I? Like, that thing. And you could just run them around by doing that. And it's the most hilarious little, like, dialogue. Because it reminds everyone of, in Fallout 4, there was a robot you could counter as a random encounter.
Sure.
And he was trying to instill a curfew. And if you looked at him and you just go, "Will you comply?" Because he asked you, he's like, "Will you comply?" And you're like, "Will you comply?" And you just repeat it to him over and over again. He overloads and he explodes. So it's kind of like a throwback to that.
That's interesting.
But I will say, after you leave that first, like, main quest of being introduced into everything, you can quite literally just leave on your ship and go wherever you want. It does not matter. Different planets will have different level recommendations.
Sure.
You can ignore them if you want. Yes, a lot of them, this is a complaint that people have said, a lot of them are kind of barren. But you can still go around and find... A lot of them
would be.
You can go around and find things. You can go back to Earth, which is just a thing of dust.
Oh, that's interesting.
And you can go to London, and you can find the giant... I'm pretty sure it's Big Ben, but I don't actually know what it is.
It's either Big Ben or the tower.
Might be the tower. I think it might be the tower. But, like, you can see, like, something. The St. Louis Arch...
In the tower.
St. Louis Arch, you can find that.
Sure.
Like, you can just go places. I went home, and I walked around the desert. I went home and walked around the desert.
Cool.
It was hilarious, but you can go find different... Like, you can find a friendly ship, and you can take over the friendly ship and steal all their stuff and steal their ship.
So you can be a pirate.
You can be a pirate.
I like it.
Your companions might not like that all that much, but the funniest part is... Has anybody ever played Oblivion?
Yes.
Alright, so you guys remember the Adoring Fan?
Yes. Not really.
Do you know who's in this game?
The Adoring Fan.
The Adoring Fan. Actually voiced by the original Adoring Fan from Oblivion. He's come back and it's a trait, so you don't actually get him unless you specifically pick the trait. Sure. But you get an automatic crew member, and he gives you stuff for free, and you can just take him out on adventures with you. Like, you can hire crew members.
Yeah.
And you can take them out to planets or quests with you.
Sure.
So you're not just restricted to the 4 companions that you can romance.
Right.
You can just hire anyone and bring them on your ship, and you can take them around with you. So you can take him with you, and he won't get mad if you do anything.
Can you shoot him out of an airlock?
Yes. Probably. I haven't tried it yet, but you can quite literally just, like, throw him around.
Well, this is fun. I have to play Starfield now. I was going to anyway,
I was worried because a lot of people were, like, kind of complaining about, like, certain aspects of it, like it being barren. But to be honest, for a Bethesda game, there's not a lot of glitches.
Well, that's nice, especially since it's still new.
Because it's a Bethesda game, and anybody who's ever played a Bethesda game knows, like, there are so many glitches that occur in a Bethesda game. Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous.
So, speaking of the internet complaining about things, as the internet is wont to do, that's our subject!
Yay!
The internet complaining about things. Yeah, I suppose that's...
I mean, technically.
The more tagline-worthy version, I suppose, is... well, you said
Grant said it was angry people, old people yelling at clouds. But to be honest, we're just yelling at TikTok, so we're talking about Booktok today.
In my defense, I worded it as "Get Off My Lawn." It's the Get Off My Lawn episode.
The Get Off My... Yeah, no, I think that's great. Which is funny, because maybe we'll be getting off lawning the Get Off Lawners.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We're
know.
talking about Booktok today. We're also talking about, internet communities, so maybe like Goodreads or Amazon or Twitter. Because like all of those like together are all
book
like
cultures, yeah.
And all of them are yes, they overlap a bit, but they're all vastly different depending on which book group you're a part of.
So, starting with that, let's run down the gamut of book groups. So that people know.
Book cultures.
Yeah, book cultures. Particularly online book culture, since that's what we're talking about.
So we have Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, book Twitter, yeah.
Book Twitter. We're still going to call it Book Twitter anyway, so
it's what it is,
sue us, whatever.
I mean, it doesn't exist anymore, but
it's the same thing.
It was there. Book Twitter.
Bookstagram, so your Instagram book groups.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with them.
So there's Bookstagram. They're not as drama bound as I've seen with everything else that I've been in. So you have Goodreads.
It's harder to be that way on Instagram, but anyway, yeah. So
you have your Goodreads.
Goodreads.
We're just going with the main 4, I guess, right now that are the most popular.
It's Goodreads, yeah.
And then the last one is Booktok, which is TikTok.
There's Booktok, but we cannot forget Booktube, because without Booktube, there would be no Booktok. And actually, my suspicion is, well, no, that's not true, because they all feed into each other. So yeah, but Booktube is prominent, and
yes.
Booktok weirdly enough, has only made Booktube more prominent, not less.
I think
because they play off of each other.
They do play off of each other, but
really
I think it's because like all the drama that happens on Booktok feeds a lot of the stuff that's happening on Booktube.
Because then Booktubers will go, I'm going to criticize these 10 Booktok people, and you're like, really? Like it's so shady. Like it's like being on RuPaul's Drag Race and you're criticizing a Real Housewife. Like it's like. Can you do that?
Granted, I would rather they just comment on the weird drama that just like happens to occur.
Oh, they do.
They
do, and it is really funny.
And I think it was really funny because at one point Booktok was just like their own little niche, right? Like you just knew they were there and they weren't as prominent. I guess you could they were still prominent, but they weren't like mainstream. And then in my opinion, I think as soon as the TikTok CEO guy did the Congress hearings, he mentioned Booktok a lot in there, which kind of he did.
Was this during the Simon & Schuster, the Department of Justice?
This was during the we were going to ban TikTok thing, and so the CEO came, and he was talking to Congress for a bit, and then he mentions Booktok as one of the more prominent things in TikTok.
Right, because it is.
Which, led it to grow a little bit bigger. And then on top of that, now more recent... I guess it's not as recent anymore, because it's that was July. But, then you have the whole hockey romance debacle, so there was that, too.
Oh, how did I miss that?
Oh, you missed the hockey romance debacle? Do you need me to tell you about the hockey romance debacle?
We will get to it.
Okay.
So, the first thing I want to do is... run down a pros and cons list. So you get 3 pros, you get 3 cons.
Okay.
Which one should we start with?
I mean, I'm not as familiar with...
No, I mean pros and cons.
Of just the groups in general?
Yeah, should we start with pros or should we start with cons?
Pros, I guess.
Okay, so give me 3 pros.
One, it gets authors out there who might not always be in the limelight. So your indie authors, your debut authors who might not, your self-published authors who might not be a part of your big Simon & Schuster's, Penguin, Hatchet, William Morrow, whoever you go off of for your books. I forgot the big giant one. Was it Harlequin? Might be Harlequin that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
There was an H one.
They're not as big as they used to be, but yeah.
But those who are not as a part of those big groups and maybe might just be going through the Amazon publishing service that you only pay a few pennies for to go into.
Yeah.
These book communities can promote their book to the communities by going look, so this is what my book's about. It's going to be, you can buy it on Amazon, you can buy it on Barnes & Noble, you can buy it here or here or here. Try out this book, and people can read it and find new authors that way.
Yeah, so self-promotion.
So that's a pro.
Yeah.
Another pro is it's another way for people to communicate with each other in a community. So it's kind of, in my opinion, it's like a big giant book club.
Yes, it does.
It's a big giant book club because like all these different people can come together and go, well, I really liked, and then he
sang lullaby.
I'm sorry, I'm reading it upside down.
Yes, no, I know.
And then I really liked, and then he sang a lullaby, and then somebody else can go, well, I didn't, and then there's a whole conversation that can happen where you talk about the nuance and those kind of things.
Sure.
Another pro is you can make new friends that way.
Yeah.
Those are some big pros for me, or at least like the three main
big. Yeah.
pros.
All right,
is you find people who are like that. Yes.
Give me 3 pros of online book communities, if you can think of any.
3 pros.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Grant's like no.
Well, I mean, you kind of hit the big ones.
3 nails on the head. Yeah.
I guess you could.
I mean, if you can't think of any, that's okay.
No, honestly, at the moment I can't.
That's all right. No, I do think
Do you have any pros?
I don't know that there are any that are greater than the 3 that you just
I mean, those
mentioned,
are the big
which is, I mean, those are the 3 reasons I think that people tend to get into them, which is, 1, you can promote whatever you want to promote. Your book, your friend's book, your, whatever.
And also, in my opinion, it's like, I compared it to a big giant book club, but like, I think, especially around books, these book communities are kind of like where the generalized fandom
I think it's where
kind of goes to.
Great deal of people who have...
It's a lot where fandoms are born in terms of, like, literary series, but you also see this with other things, because, like, you see this with movie communities of a whole people going, I really like this movie, and they make a whole bunch of edits of it, and then somebody cosplays somebody's as... So it's like, kind of like, you could say a Booktok or Bookster or book communities online are just a generalized way of going like, hi, I like this book, does anybody else like this book? And you create a fandom out of it.
Yeah, no, that's
it's
true.
Like,
it does happen that way.
It's kind of just the start of how those
And there are
things...
offshoots that go from that. No, that's fair.
This could be a positive or negative, I guess, but like...
Actually, I'm going to leave it up to you to give us 3 cons.
3 cons?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could give you so many cons.
You can give you just give us 3 that that come to mind, perhaps.
Okay, I'll start with the one I was going to say.
Yes.
Well, it could be, like I said, it could be a con or a pro, whatever.
Sure.
It's just a part of it.
Sure.
I can see like cycles of like validation like being formed.
You can see the echo chamber.
The echo chamber, like where the same style of books, anyways, keep being brought up.
Yes.
Positive opinions are constantly validated,
and it's always the same ones that you see like constantly.
Yeah, and nothing new is presented.
And if it is something that's presented that is new, it's presented as new, despite the fact that it probably isn't. Looking at you, Red, White, and Royal Blue. Looking at you, what's that other, the lesbian orc book?
Lesbian orc book?
Yes, Legends and Lattes.
Legends and Lattes.
Everyone puts a spotlight on those, like, oh, we've never seen this before, and then they give it a name, right? They're like, oh, cozy fantasy, and I'm like, you mean Diana Wynne Jones? Like, has no one read Howl's Moving Castle?
No,
like,
they haven't.
And that's the weird thing is that like they will then put out a video later that's like 5 books that read like Legends and Lattes that you didn't know about, and then one of them is Howl's Moving Castle, and you're like,
I need like
so.
That's me hitting my head on the table.
Yes, that's one con. Give us another.
Yeah, and I don't want to like push against like what you said. With
go for it. Push against it.
It's a con
with like putting indie authors in a space. But like, are we really seeing underground, like truly challenging work being presented on these things, or are we just seeing this? Are we just seeing?
It
this
depends.
Okay.
It depends.
It depends on what you mean by truly challenging work, but we'll take that as a con.
Okay.
And do you mean truly challenging work overall, or just like truly challenging work from specific spaces, or
just overall? I mean, like you guys have more experience with this than I do.
No, this is good.
Yeah, I'm not.
No, this is why we're talking about this now. Keep going.
I'm not enmeshed in this community, so maybe you can enlighten me.
Yes, and then your third con would be.
Oh God.
It could even just be a suspicion that you have.
A suspicion.
Sure, I don't know.
I suspect it's a money laundering scheme. I don't know. I'm joking.
I joking. It's been turned into a money laundering
sure,
scheme.
yeah.
No, I mean, listen, when I tell you about the hockey romance story, you'll understand.
I mean, would I be surprised if publishers or blah, 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 blah pay for influencers to talk about their books? I'm sure it happens, yeah.
You're close. You're so close.
To what extent? I don't know.
It's never been as much as people make it out to be.
Okay.
So quick, short, dirty history of online book communities.
Presented by Tony.
Apart from, certain listserv kinds of things, because, okay, let's be clear. Science fiction and fantasy communities have been gathering since
ages.
the 30s and 40s to talk about books.
The dawn of time.
Yeah, and the dawn of the internet in Al Gore's internet coming along in 1980 whatever. I know. Don't criticize me, Grant.
2.0 was introduced, and here we go.
Once it happens, all of a sudden, especially science fiction nerds, because they're already most of them grew up wanting to be tech people, and so you have this whole generation of young people who are already science fiction nerds who already know about science fiction.
Possibly ostracized because of the fact that they might be the outcasted.
Yeah, maybe they can't afford to go to Comic-Con every year, and maybe they can't afford to go to Comic-Con any year, but they're joining the computer world, and in that they find out about these things called listservs and forums and blogs and just that whole stuff that happened in the 90s. They
can live journal their whole entire bookography.
That was an explosion of a leg of the science fiction community that took part of what they could because it was cheaper than trying to get a ticket to Comic-Con and getting all your,
that's still true today.
And it was hard, and it was, you didn't have friends who lived close by you, so even if you had been to Comic-Con by the time you were 20, there were people that you were never going to see again unless you all went back to Comic-Con because you lived in various parts of the country or the world.
And it wasn't technologically feasible at that time to be able to, access your friends at the touch of a button on your phone.
Exactly. So then that
now.
morphs at a certain point, right around in the early 2000s, that morphs into, in a really bizarre way, the YA blogosphere. So other people were testing out the blog thing, and it was, up and down, and no one was really getting anywhere with it. And it was sort of the first form of publishers going, other than saying you have to have a website, it was the first form of publishers encouraging new authors, make sure that you have a blog, make sure that you have a live show, make sure that you, whatever, because that was going to give them their audience, right? That was the very first. Then they ended up doing it with Facebook and Twitter and Booktok and all these other places. But it started with LiveJournal and the early blogospheres in the early 2000s.
Yes.
So that the YA community took that on in a huge way, and it was fan-led. People who were loving Suzanne Collins and Stephanie Meyer and Melissa Molly, the paranormal romance fad in the YA, the fans were like, oh, we want to talk about this with people. We can't go see Suzanne Collins or go see this person.
So now we have Tumblr and we have Twitter and we can talk about people on there.
It all becomes its own thing because you have a computer savvy generation looking at the next era of the internet and taking advantage of that, and publishers lit on that really quick. They were like, oh my god, so many people who want to buy these books are also writing blogs. But the problem became publishers were sending out more free books to people with blogs because everybody had blogs than they were actually getting sales back because people were not actually going out and buying the book.
No, they're signing up on NetGalley and Edelweiss and those kind of things, which I've considered looking at as collection development.
Yes, but it's all free. It's all if you get an advanced reader copy, the publisher is sending it to you. It's at cost to the publisher, not to the person who has the ARC. And if you have an ARC, why buy the book the day it comes out? Even if you already have it. You already have it. You've already read it. You can wait.
Yeah, sure. There might be a couple typos here and there, but you already have it. You've already read it. You already know exactly what's happening.
Yes, and so then that dovetails into YouTube/Booktube, which was about to die until Book Twitter took off, and then that from Book Twitter you get Goodreads was a thing, but it wasn't the force that it is now until Book Twitter. You get Booktok and Bookstagram, which also were not forces of their own until Book Twitter. Book Twitter was like an aggregate for all of these things.
Right, because it was easier to say Or you could turn around, and especially with book Twitter at the time, because you only had 140 characters, you could say, here's a link to like my Tumblr or my blog or my thing or my video and
the reason I call it an aggregate is because everything passed through Twitter.
Yep.
Every link to every New York Times article or this blog or this so everything became equal to itself.
Yes.
Does that make sense? So it was like, okay, this we're going to talk about And Then He Sang a Lullaby, right? Well, the author of And Then He Sang a Lullaby could have a Twitter feed where instead of just talking about himself or his life or whatever, he could just go, so the New York Times reviewed my book this week. Oh, this blogger has a really cool thing to say about my book this week. Hey, this YouTuber loves my books this week. This Booktoker. And
the thing is, the author doesn't have to say anything anyway because it's all by the other person saying that.
The thing about it is that all of those things, the New York Times review is being put in the same position as a 15-second Booktok video.
Yep.
And that's where I feel you get so much of the pros and cons of the online book communities. You know, one of my big cons for the online book communities is how people talk about books. Because they position themselves as authorities. Or, and some of this is not conscious, that's the other problem that I have, is like, you know, the New York Times reviewer, they know that they are an authority on this, or some kind of authority. Why? Because the New York Times has told them to write. Like, the New York Times is paying them to write a review. It's not breaking the bank, but your name is going to be in the New York Times. I mean, you know, none of us in this building, none of us in this town can say that. Yeah,
you're literally, except I think Library Journal is more volunteer-based, depending on, like, if it's audiobooks.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what our previous friends have told us. But, you're being told, read this book.
Yes, and then
tell us your honest opinion about it.
Yes.
And
yes.
But
that's the thing, is that, you know, the New York Times paying people to do it, that is a different thing than, you know, you or I going, I'm going to start my own channel and I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about.
Do you think with the expectation of, like, well, granted, not everyone's like this, but, like, especially, like, in the Booktok community or things like that, do you think there's more of an like, with New York Times reviews or Library Journal reviews or book list reviews or something like that, you will see reviews that are sometimes really positive, and there's a website that I follow called Bookmark.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, Bookmarks. Mm-hmm.
Bookmarks. And they'll tell you, like, these are all positive, these are all rave reviews, these are all mixed reviews, these are all, like, this is trash reviews. And so you get, like, a whole, like, you can read all of them, which is fantastic. But, like, the people who are reviewing them, especially for Library Journal, Book List, New York Times, whatever, they're under no authority to have to make that book sound fantastic. If the book sucks, they're going to tell you that the book sucks.
Well, but that's the thing. The mandate, I think...
Do you think with, like, Booktok and, like, the reviewers, especially those, like, tinier reviewers who aren't as, like, authoritative, they're under more pressure to give it a positive review because then they can get more things to review on?
No. In fact, I think that professional review places like the New York Times have recognized the value of online book communities and have tailored their entire effort towards that. So every New York Times book review, if you ever read anything from the New York Times book review now, as opposed to 20 years ago,
I rarely do, to be honest.
20 years ago, they all sound like book talkers now.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really care about book reviews.
But they sound like book talkers who went to college.
To be honest,
for literature, so they have literature degrees, right?
Like, so
and
they actually, like, have that.
Writing like they have a literature degree. So the paragraphs, you know, they're fine, they're good, they're well written. But when you actually read them, you're like, you're not. Why didn't you just tell me in one sentence that you hated the book? Next, you know, or why didn't you tell me in one sentence that you liked the book?
What was it, Katie Roberts' book the other weekend? I was just like, I hate it. I don't like this at all.
Because it becomes nonsensical. If your review is as long as a Goodreads review, the one thing I'm going to tell you about a Goodreads review as opposed to a New York Times review is the Goodreads review is more entertaining.
Right.
But they're both doing the same thing. They are both trying to convince the reader why you should or should not buy the book. And that is, to me, the biggest con of the entire book
Is that they're trying
community.
to persuade you to either read or not read it?
Yeah, but they have none of the tools of persuasion. None of them have gone to school to study criticism. None of them even know how to talk about a book apart from, well, it made me feel whatever it made you feel. And it's like, yeah, but that's like layer one. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay. So you got mad when that character was essayed on page. Of course you would. You like to think
you're
of yourself
reading
as
it. The author is trying to make you feel that way in the first place.
You're a human being with feelings, and like this isn't something that you just see all the time.
That's different from then going like, I disliked this book because it was written in first person, and first person isn't my favorite.
But even then,
but
it's just
you
so
can read it if you like it.
Like the way, to me, a book is not worth talking about. And maybe that's just me being a snob. I don't know. A book is not worth talking about on a platform. If you're going to say, well, this is how it made me feel. I can go to you. I can come to work and be like, and I felt like this about this book, or I felt like this while reading that book, or I didn't like it, or whatever. That's fine. But the idea of the entire book reviewership becoming this pool of like, well, here's why you should read this book, because it's by a queer black author and they don't do things like this. And you're like, but is it good? Like,
is it actually good? Or does it read like I read a Wattpad fan fiction in 2014?
Or worse, they'll say things like, oh, there's never been a book like this ever that I've ever read. And it's like, that's because you haven't read this thing that was published in 1975 that does exactly all of those things, but the language is better. I mean, go back and read Portnoy's Complaint and then come and tell me that you've never read a book that has a lot of sex on it. Like it's unbelievable that people are creating this much furor over any book and have no idea that nothing that they're seeing in books published today is new. Nothing's inventive. No. Not a single thing.
Like, I was reading, like, the book that I was reading, and I'm just like, this just reads like I read a fan fiction on Wattpad, and I was just like, I could not spend money on this, and I could go read a fan fiction of my favorite characters for free, doing this exact same thing, and it would change absolutely nothing of the story, like, because it's exactly the same.
Yeah, and but I think the thing about it that I find nauseating about online book communities and the way that they talk about books is that they don't know how to put books in conversation. I call this the Lizzo problem.
I'm excited to hear the Lizzo problem.
So Lizzo, to me, regardless of what her music is actually doing, has never once, with the exception of last year at the Grammys, and I think it's because she was standing in front of Beyonce's face and sitting at her table, so she had to give props where they were supposed to be given. But she doesn't say to the public, to the audience, my music is in a part of a tradition. I am not the first big black woman to do this. I'm the biggest black woman to do this, but I'm not the first. We had Missy, we had Queen Latifah, we had whoever.
Aretha, whoever.
Well, Aretha didn't rap, but yeah. But she doesn't put herself within a tradition, because to do that is to... this is a theory, would be to denounce one's own gift. Young, black, and gifted, I am doing all these things. I don't need to have kind of had an influence, and it's like, but you're not doing anything you're not doing anything new.
Yeah.
Literally not even the body thing, because, again, Latifah and Elliot got there first for decades. So, like, and sorry, Lizzo fans, you can hate me. The music ain't that great. Like,
fair.
It's okay. It's catchy. It's a bop. But is it doing anything? No.
Are you going to really care about it honestly, in like 10 years?
Exactly. Cardi and Meghan are way more interesting.
I love their stuff.
Way more interesting.
Because it's interesting.
It's interesting. It's not always good. But like, lyrically, they're far more interesting.
Lyrically, like, I'm sitting there and I'm going, oh, I love this beat. I can just continue going on. And it's stuck in my head for, like, ages.
Yeah. They're to me, they are masterminds, the two of them. Whereas,
Grant has talking this whole time.
I know.
Grant is just, like, sitting here in the corner.
But yes, no, that's the Lizzo problem, which is the idea that, you can create art ex nihilo. Like, and yet, not be brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can create something that people are raving about, and yet when you look at its components, what? Like, it's the same thing we've all seen before. I'm looking at you, Harry Potter. Because it was the same thing. It's the same thing with Harry Potter. I mean,
but that's why I read the fan fictions that I do read, because like other people can take that and just like roll with
I don't know. It's
meh.
Yes, Grant. You're making faces. What are your faces?
Oh, I'm making faces?
Yes.
Yeah, you were making faces. That's why I asked you
I was
had
just
any
wondering,
opinions.
yes, what are your... Any thoughts? Any other things?
What do you think about book communities?
The online ones.
I feel like I don't have anything of substance to offer.
Oh, that's all right.
That's okay.
I just wanted to see what you might have to say before we get into the hockey romance scandal.
Oh, did you not know about the hockey romance scandal?
I missed this completely.
So
what happened?
There was, so, Booktok is, a thing. We all know it's a thing. We all know, or at least we should all be slightly aware that romance on Booktok
it's a big deal.
is a huge thing.
Sure.
So, like, you were saying, like, everyone got on their forums or whatever for sci-fi, fantasy, whatever.
Back in the day, yes.
Booktok is, like, the romance readers, like, version of that.
Yeah, that's true.
For better or for worse, I will technically say for worse, because
of the hockey romance scandal?
Because of the toxicity that comes with everyone trying to persuade you to read it.
Okay.
In certain ways, and that just might not be your type of reading. Some of the books, yes, they're dark romances, but like not everybody's going to like that type of thing. And then everyone is still recommending like the same 5 books over and over again.
I did see a few Booktube videos.
Like
about that.
They're like, here's my list of my books that you should read if you like this, and they're all the exact same as the previous video I literally just watched, and I'm like, did you all just like get the exact same script and like post it? Like it was just kind of it like to me, I find like, yes, I like Booktok in certain fashions, but I think a lot of the opinions are just like the exact same over and over again, and it just gets boring. And that's why I, like in the back room, I have the list of like all in my notebook, that list of all the different books that like I add to my Amazon wish list to read. Yeah, it's because like I just want a wide variety. I like, if you're gonna tell me like that all these different books are reading exactly the same like Colleen Hoover, I'm not gonna read all of them. I might pick like one or two. Yeah. But like if you're gonna give me like all of them, and then in the next video for like a different Colleen Hoover book, you're gonna give me all the exact same books as Rex. Like I'm bored already. Like just like stop before I take
romance.
A nap. So
what happened?
Sports romances became a big thing in the community, and
which is funny because they've kind of been a big thing for the last 3 years. But
no, because that's when it started. Because they went through different, like it was football romances, and then you had your different sports romances, and right now recently it was hockey romances that were the big giant thing. Yeah. So a lot of people were reading the hockey romances. We love the hockey romances; they're great. And then and I'll just cut, I'm not going to name drop like everything that goes along with it, but like one of the sports teams was like, oh, we're going to fully embrace this and like have it be a whole entire thing.
Oh, that's
like,
cool.
We're going to... So then there were some other booktalkers who like take that, and whenever you put a bunch of people like in the same group, you're obviously going to see the more vocal minority be like the most extreme out of everyone. So, the teams were putting out like videos of the players like walking out and they're wearing suits, which is like a big like everyone wants to see them wearing suits in their romance novels, and all of a sudden everyone's like happy about this. And they're gonna start posting really just like not nice and safe for work like comments on videos of things.
Sure.
So one of the sports teams, the Krakens in Seattle, turned around and brought in this one girl who was on Booktok, like, to do some of their social media stuff. Sure. For, like, Booktok related things. Sure. And she was making some she was basically, like, thirst trapping, like, some of the players.
Okay.
And the wife of one of the players was just like, I don't like this. And so she decided to, and granted, it's not exactly the Booktalker's fault in the first place because the Seattle Kraken team was telling her to do these things, but like that's a whole entire thing. So the wife was like, I don't like the fact that, you know, this stuff is being said about my husband, I'd like you all to stop. And so name drops the Booktalker, like, who's, like, making the videos and saying the things in the first place because, you know, she's being paid to.
Yeah.
And it led into this whole entire thing where the Booktalker, got dropped and, like, the Krakens just kind of, like, ceased, like, doing any, like, book talk stuff.
Huh.
In general, and it led to like all the different sports outlets like posting about Booktok and how thirsty all of the women are who are like
so then it becomes this like sexist machine of hate of like, oh, this is why we don't let women read romance novels because look what happened. Ugh.
Yeah, it was like a whole entire thing, and then it led to even further because the Booktalker decided to just, you know, her ego got super inflated and was like, I'm the queen of Booktok, and you're just like, are you kidding me? No. And then decided that like she needed to like have 4 different book clubs and we're gonna make people like pay like absorbent amounts of money to even like be in the book clubs with her. Like it just made no sense.
Interesting.
And then she was also doing paid promotions without disclosing that they were paid promotions for book reviews on Booktok.
Yeah,
so there's like a
whole mess too.
The whole entire community is just kind of like a mess a lot of times. And you find gems that are kind of great. But a lot of times it's a lot of people just going, well, this author's super problematic because XYZ. Great.
Yeah, there are a lot of those.
Let me tell you that we're just going to be really mad at you if you read this book by this author because of XYZ. Which
again is another reason why I'm just kind of like, and that's another like, con.
And I'm like, that's kind of like a con because like then you're sitting there and you're just like, I don't care.
Well, because
like,
here's the thing. Because
I'm going to read it.
It's all about how one person on a platform is reading something,
right,
and then demanding
pretty much
that you read it that way too. And I think, so the author wrote racist slurs in the book.
Yes,
but if that book is oh my gosh, what's the Mark Twain book? If that book is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, I'm gonna think differently about that than I am, you know, something published in 2023. But even then,
there's a lot of like overreaching into it. And I'm just
kind of skeptical of anyone who's preaching that I dare not read a book,
or that they have I shouldn't read this book because,
or that they have this, you know, opinion. I'm going to have opinions about you if I see you reading that book, and it's like. But it's a book.
Or if I see you review this book, well, great. I want to objectively read it without your opinion.
I could give a book a positive review because I liked reading it. Does that mean that I like having racial slurs in my book? No, that means.
Does that mean I support the author by reading it? No, I got it at the library.
I mean, I think the whole supporting author thing has gotten weird since people sort of detach themselves from J.K. Rowling, but that's because they wanted to keep Harry Potter. And I'm like, you don't get to do that. I'm sorry. You have to have the baby and the bathwater, okay? Like if the baby refuses to be clean, you know, slap it on the bottom and send it to bed. But like, I'm sorry. The bathwater gets to stay mucky and gross. And like, come on. Like,
you just kind of embrace it at that point.
Yeah, you can't.
You're just like, great, this is there.
I absolutely love Harry Potter, and I absolutely loathe the things that the author has said in many different ways. They can't be disconnected though.
Do I support the author currently? No. But do I understand that some of their points of views might have influenced what was written in the book that I love?
No, but I don't think that either. I think people are post-dating. They're like, oh, well, you could always tell that she was transphobic because look at what she did with this character. And I'm like, no! Because in 1993, when she conceived of that character, Oprah was talking about transsexuals on her show in 1994, and it was a scandal because RuPaul was on Oprah. Like, and RuPaul's not even trans.
Isn't he just gay?
He's a drag queen. Like, that's how little the distinction was at that time for people in the general public. So there's no way J.K. Rowling was transphobic in 1994. She didn't even know what a trans person was.
Right.
So my point is, people get really weird about this stuff.
Did you pull things out of the hat for us?
I have something.
Okay.
So I'm going to.
We're just gonna
deploy that now.
We're gonna hard cut here and go to the smack.
So I'm going to deploy that now. Would you rather?
Oh no.
Become famous via your Goodreads profile and the books that you read there, or your Booktok channel?
Goodreads. And I will say this will sound weird, but that's because when I make, like, quite literally, my TikTok only has 2 videos on it, and my face is not in either of the videos.
Oh.
With Goodreads, you're not required to put your face in your profile.
Sure.
You could just be a random, just, like, faceless, your little profile picture could just be an orange dot. That's it.
That's true.
And all people know you by is the orange dot. You're not required on Goodreads
to
have an actual public profile of your first and last name physically out there. I mean, granted, you're not on TikTok either, but
it's more
on
expected.
TikTok, you're more expected to show your face for these things, and so people are going to be able to find you quickly on the internet, and I don't like the fact that, you know, that could just lead to doxing and a lot of things.
Could lead to, yeah, that's true.
Specifically, like, if I have an opinion on a book that Sally over here don't like, Sally could then turn around, figure out who I am, and then completely harass, like, anybody that I am involved with, either in my personal life or something, all because I can show my face. But on Goodreads, all I have to do is just post a review for the book and I'm done. I'm not required to have I'm not required to adhere to the beauty standards or the different societal standards that I have to adhere to be able to post a video on TikTok and have it become famous.
Well, that's true.
But, like, if it's on Goodreads, it could just literally be because I'm funny and I use GIFs in my reviews. Like, that could be it.
Which does
I
happen,
could literally just post a review that goes, I hate it, and then have a GIF of this is fine, and that's it. Or a dumpster fire, and that could be my whole review, and people might go, that's hilarious.
Grant?
I would have to say Goodreads as well. For many of the reasons that Aaron specified.
Oh, that's so funny. Honestly, I would choose TikTok because, one, it's less work. Actually. For me, it would be less work because I would be lazy.
I would feel better about myself becoming famous off of Goodreads for that reason.
It's clear to me that neither one of you read enough Goodreads reviews.
I do actually.
They're dreadful.
I read them for fun.
All right, so here's your homework, and this is homework for all listeners. Pick your favorite book that you've read recently. Something you just love. Doesn't matter what it is. In fact, I'm going to challenge you to look at the Cormac McCarthy reviews on Goodreads.
I already know a ton of people hate his.
No, I know, but it's the way.
I read
to
reviews.
me.
I read them for fun.
And the fun ones, honestly, are the 3 stars.
Yes.
1 and 2 are just kind of like, I hate this book in all caps, or that, and the 5 stars are generally less interesting because you agree with them if you like the book.
Well, granted,
but
I think
the 3 stars are so funny and so dumb that it's mild.
Those are my favorite ones.
So entertaining.
I also like the 2 stars where it goes, I gave it 2.5 stars, and then they just go through the whole gamut, and you're just like, okay, you really